now. So first of all, welcome on behalf of the training working group of the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. Thanks for joining here another of our webinars, and this time we will talk about some advanced topics concerning waterways. That means I'm Michael here, and with me today are Jeffrey, Potts Community Projects Lead, and Ralph. I'm pretty sure most of you know his name. He's one of our real capacities in terms of validation. So what are you going to learn today? First of all, I will tell you something about barriers on waterways. After that, Jeffrey will take over and talk about natural waterways, anything from about lagoons and lakes and things like that. And finally, Ralph will cover a whole lot of topics, from navigation to irrigation and drainage. So let us jump right on just share something different here. Hold on for a second. Okay, there we are. And let me share the barriers on waterways. So when we talk about waterways, and we've done that extensively in our introductory webinar, but just to get a bit of the terminology right, I'd like to recap a little bit. We'll be talking about both natural and artificial waterways today. Natural, of course, are rivers and streams. There is the famous definition you can find in the wiki that river is anything you cannot jump across, while a stream is something you can jump across. I mean, sure, this is not to be taken too literally. If we all enter a jumping competition, I guess our mileage would vary considerably. So my personal mileage there would be anything below 3 meters or something, or even 4 would be rather a stream, and above I'd call it a river. Things are a bit better defined when it comes to artificial waterways. We've got canals. Canals carry useful water. Useful that might be in terms of irrigation. Useful is also useful for shipping, or that would be a canal. Drains and ditches are for superfluous water. Drains usually have a solidly prepared bed with concrete or stones, while ditches are simply dug out from the earth. They have a natural bed. So, of course, if they are filled with water, might not be that easy to see on aerial imagery. So that's what we're going to talk about. And similarly, when we talk about barriers on waterways, barriers can occur on natural waterways as well as on artificial ones. And what kinds of natural barriers are there typically? Well, you will all know what a waterfall is. Rapids, if some of you haven't heard that before, are simply stretches of a river where there are stones or rocks in the riverbed. So typically navigation is a problem here unless you're experienced and have a canoe. And so let me talk about some of these barriers and how to map them properly. And therefore, let's move on to JOSM. And let me share my JOSM screen. By the way, I severely hope that people advise me if something is different from what I'm telling you. And if you've got any questions, you can use the chat window. And those of us who are not actively presenting will jump in and either answer your questions or advise me that I should repeat something. So I simply assume that you're all seeing my JOSM now. And this here are the famous Victoria Falls at the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. This here is not exactly during the rainy season, but you can well see that this is not just one single waterfall. It's a whole spectrum of waterfalls here across that cliff. And we're usually talking about something like 1.2 or 1.5 kilometers where the water comes down over this cliff. So clearly a waterfall is where water drops vertically. So you have a cliff, and when we take a closer look at how things are mapped in here, typically you will start with a cliff. So this is a natural cliff. It's segmented here. And the reason for that here simply is that the different parts of this cliff and the different parts of this waterfall have individual names. So the only way to map this is to divide it into several individual falls. So you've got the river, and the river here is the Zambezi, which crosses the border or forms the border here between these two countries. And so the waterway here crosses the cliff, and usually at the intersection point, you've got a waterway equals to waterfall. Yeah. So you can see they've got their individual names, such as Rainbow Falls here, or the Horseshoe Falls, and which is the reason why you need different segments for the river and different waterfalls in here. So, but usually the drop is pretty vertical, so it's not advisable to map the waterfall as an area. The usual convention is you just take the intersection of the waterway with the cliff, and that's where you put the waterfall in. So, and then, yeah, all these different segments are combined, and they also form the border here. Exactly. Let me just, oops, it's always a bit difficult. To make, I had to let it stand out here. Okay, so we've got the Waterway River, which at the same time is an administrative boundary. This is well justified here because usually the boundaries between nations here like this are defined by the river. So, of course, a waterfall can also have lots of other tags. I mean, usually the height can be included. Of course, this is nothing we can determine when we're mapping from aerial imagery. So that would require local knowledge. And yeah, so that's basically what a waterfall is. Things are maybe not that clear when we talk about those rapids because they can stretch over quite some portion of a river. Let me have a look here. This is from the French Alps, and let me also just show you a little bit. This is a river which, yeah, loses height considerably, but not in a vertical drop as in a waterfall, but there are some stretches here where you can see that the riverbed, as in here, is mainly consists of rocks, and this is what is called rapids. They can be stretched over quite some time, quite some area here, quite some distance, but in this case it's also a fairly limited feature in terms of extension. So we've got the waterway here, which is the river, and then we have a node here for waterway rapids. It says rapids equals 1. That means there might be others here, other rapids which consist of several distinguishable steps, so they can be combined like this. Again, these are features which should be easily visible here on aerial imagery. Any more details, yeah, are left to survey on the ground or some further knowledge. Yeah. So these are some of the main features. Yeah, kinds of barriers we encounter on natural waterways. The spectrum is a lot more varied when we are talking about artificial waterways. And let me just get back to my slide deck here on barriers on waterways. So we've also got a couple of man-made barriers. So the most common are dams and weirs. Dams are, well, usually they retain water. Of course, there will be some overflow mechanism provided, and dams are often used for the generation of electrical energy. So they might have a constant flow, but way larger portion of the water is contained. A weir, on the other hand, is typically a mechanism to regulate the flow and the depth of some river. So the water is usually flowing constantly above that, and the height of that weir can be adjusted in order to regulate the amount of water which can flow there. So there are also other mechanisms how this can be achieved, such as gates which are lowered from above. And if you're not sure what kind of a barrier you're looking at, there is the definitive resource we all should be aware of. And that means, let me just get this down here. Okay, and share that window. The definitive resource, as in most cases, is the OpenStreetMap wiki. And there you've got a page which is called Map Features, and that is the definitive resource for any kind of mapping. And if we scroll down a little bit here, we will see there is also a section on waterways, which shows us, well, the main features we can expect. There are also some typical barriers, and of course, the key waterway has a page of its own, which goes into greater detail. Natural water courses, more kinds of artificial waterways, even more kinds of barriers. This kind of sluice gate or floodgate is what I was just mentioning. It's movable, and the water flow is always below the gate, and it can be controlled by how far the gate will be lowered. But let's first talk about dams, and, well, weirs are pretty much depicted in the same way. So let us talk about dams first. So let me get to share my JOSM again. And let's take a look at a reservoir. Yeah, selecting it would greatly help. So again, this is in northern Cameroon. It's a fairly large reservoir here, and here we obviously have a dam, and the flow out of the basin goes into that river. In most cases, the dam is somewhat larger and will be well visible on aerial imagery, so it is pretty customary to map the dam as a polygon, which spans the whole area as we can see it here on the aerial imagery. Waterway equals dam is the tag to be used for this. And well, this is also a good example of what you should not do. Please don't abuse a field like contact email for some note. This should definitely go into a note on such an object. Typically, one side of the dam will coincide with the reservoir. So in this case, this way is part of a couple of objects. First of all, of course, the dam, but it is also part of the multi-polygon for the reservoir. And reservoirs, yes, are typically larger objects, so they might even have, islands here in between. So usually they are multi-polygons, simply because of the fact that if it's a larger polygon, the ways which form the bank can't get artificially long in OpenStreetMap. So you typically have to split it up and combine it as the multi-polygon. We also have some access ways here, some service highway, which moves along there. So this is, okay, S3 doesn't give me enough imagery here. Okay, so then let's have a look how we deal with the water course. First of all, the water will have to pass through this dam. So that's this portion here. It has a layer of -1. It's not on the surface. And in this case, it's mapped as a tunnel equals culvert of this waterway equals river. That's perfect. And after that, we're into a canal. So it is probably something artificial which connects here with that river. So this is mapped here as a canal. Not really a need to, well, there's nothing special on this node, so one could have easily combined these stretches of the canal. And then you also have the bank of this canal tagged as natural water, and water equals river. Well, so, and finally, okay, so what they also map in here is, I think there is also some waterway here in a tunnel or culvert. I mean, that must be local knowledge, because when I look at this aerial imagery, no matter which one it is, I really wouldn't dare to say that this is really a tunnel, but yeah, so don't guess this wildly from aerial imagery. This might really be a dead end of the former river. And then they might have, and then this canal here is the exclusive way how water can flow out of that reservoir. So, and if you've got a smaller dam, for instance, it is also perfectly okay to map the dam only as a line. We've got a good example here. This is in the Baltics. It would have been perfectly okay if one mapped this as a polygon as well, but if you're not sure what is really the dam and what is something else, or if you're a bit in a hurry, okay, that's something interesting. Comes from the Apple Paint style. Yeah, that's something I'll talk about very soon. So what do we have here? We've got the waterway dam, sure, and it is also a footway. It is the footway which extends outside of the dam. So here we've got a footway, and here we've got both. Usually, OpenStreetMap rules say that a line can either be a highway or a waterway, but there are two examples where there must be an exemption from this rule, and this is the one we are looking at. A dam can, of course, carry a highway, and yeah, they are at exactly the same place, so they should share the way. And this is has already been driven into JOSM's validator. So if you run JOSM's validator in here, it won't deliver anything. But one of those paint styles, I usually use the Apple paint style, still says highway with waterway tag is something to be flagged red. This can be safely ignored. This is perfectly okay. And then again, yeah, we've got the stream here. Here it's a layer -1 waterway stream, tunnel equals culvert. That's basically the same as we've seen before. And then it continues as a usual stream. Well, not sure if I would call something 40 meters wide a stream. So to me, this definitely sounds like a river. Dams do not necessarily have to be extended objects, polygons. They might as well be a line. And yeah, there is another major obstacle, usually in a canal, I've not mentioned previously, and that is, of course, a lock. Locks are usually on navigable canals. Yep, there we are. So first of all, again, this is, well, one end of a canal. As you can see, it's clearly used for shipping. Here we're up in the more or less open sea. And yeah, there are a couple of locks in here. So how do we map this? Well, obviously the canal ends at this lock, so there is no waterway which will take us out of there. Here we come in with a waterway equals canal. And of course, we've got that waterway equals canal also inside the lock. But yeah, the attribute lock equals yes makes it pretty clear. A lock has, well, locking gates, of course, on both sides. So there will be, and the whole area here should be one polygon, natural water, water equals lock. So that should, of course, also comprise the lock gates here on both ends. And anything else, yes, is typically left to local knowledge if someone knows more about the construction of this lock. So the important point is usually the waterway goes through it and shares a node here on both ends with the lock, the natural water. And this polygon here is really important, no, not the lock gate, but the lock itself, so that we know the dimension of the lock. So that's how this one should be mapped. Of course, we're not going to give you an exhaustive list of all kinds of barriers and other obstacles you can find, but many of the other bits will mostly be available only if you are moving on the ground and have some kind of local knowledge. Let me just get back to my slide deck here. So why so? I mean, just have a look at this one here. This is aerial imagery, Bing, and well, we have a river down there, And I guess most of us would agree at first sight, well, this is kind of bridge. Maybe it's a footbridge, it's not too wide. But if you look a little bit closer, you think, oh, there are some interesting features on that thing. Wonder whether it's really a bridge. And you'd never guess what it really is unless you're standing next to it and see that it is something like this. This is also a man-made barrier, and it's one of a pretty ingenious type. Well, there are all kinds of barriers which do not want to retain or control the flow of water, but which are there in order to retain debris, anything which could cause major damage to bridges and things like that in a village further down the line. And so usually, yeah, so this is by far not a bridge at all. But of course, this is not visible on aerial imagery. So one of the reasons why we usually recommend not to buy it, there is an object you don't know, you better place a note there and say, well, someone who is on the ground near that place might have a look and determine what it really is. The wiki, of course, also has extensive coverage of these bits here. Let me get back to the wiki page on Waterways. And now I have to find it here. Yeah, so there are all kinds of debris screens, for instance. That's usually something which prevents from a debris from flowing further. But there is also a quite new proposal, and that is called check dam. And that is a really interesting page here because check dams, there you see that people can be quite inventive when it comes to preventing any kind of debris. That's what we've seen here in the lower left corner. But you can see here that there are many more ways, and most of them will look pretty, well, pretty slim on aerial imagery. So usually this is really left to survey on the ground if you want to dive into this subject. Yeah. Dams and weirs are much easier to see when you are mapping from aerial imagery. So again, if you see something, have an idea what that might be, don't know how to tag it. The OpenStreetMap wiki here, continuing from the map features page and then diving down further here, is typically your friend when you need to. No, that's not the waterway section. The waterway section is below that. No, it's above that here. Yep. There we are with the waterways, exactly. So whether it's different kinds of natural causes, whether it's man-made waterways, facilities, or barriers, or any other features, please refer to the wiki page. So that is basically the overview I wanted to give you on that topic. Do we have any questions so far which still need to be answered? That doesn't seem to be the case. But I think I'll simply hand over to Jeffrey, who will let you know more about natural waterways and water areas.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'll go ahead to share my screen. Yeah, so yeah, we are going to be discussing the natural kind of tag that is used for mapping waterways. And yeah, I'll be using some slides, but also switching between the slides and JOSM. So we do use the natural equals water tag to map inland water bodies that are both naturally occurring and also man-made. So that is important to note. Just because the tag is natural equals water, we don't only use it only on natural water features, but also those that are man-made. What it really means is that this kind of water feature is inland. So it's a parent tag, which is used to describe inland areas of water. But to describe or to specify the type of water body or the usage of the water body, we add on the water tag. So you'll see it being used in combination with other tags. So you'll find natural water and then plus water equals lake to tag a lake. Natural equals water plus water equals oxbow for an oxbow lake. So that's the same for ponds, reservoirs, lagoons, and rivers. And we're going to look at some of these examples as we go on. So yeah, the very first one, which we also looked at in the Basic Waterways webinar, are the lakes. So yeah, we normally tag lakes as water equals lake plus natural equals water. But these are really natural or semi-natural bodies of water that are surrounded by land. When you find lakes that are artificial, they are normally tagged as water equals basin, water equals reservoir, or water equals pond. And also, of course, you have also additional tags like the name, if the lake has an official name. Also, we use intermittent equals yes if the lake sometimes or disappears because of the seasons. But also, we use salt equals yes to tag salty water lakes. Another type of lake that is interesting are the oxbow lakes. And these oxbow lakes are usually U-shaped, and normally they are found where you find the rivers, where you find rivers are meandering. And usually the main stem, like the river is cut off, and then you have an oxbow kind of shaped water body, which is now forming a lake. So let me try to switch to JOSM, and then we can look at some of these examples. So yeah, so this is a river which is in southern Africa, but when you look around the river, you'll find some of these features, and also you can look at where they are rendered on the map. So there is the river, but also you find like these kind of U-shaped lakes around the course of the river. So these are the oxbow lakes that have been formed. And yeah, if you check the tags that have been added to this, this is natural water, and then water oxbow. So basically, that's how we tag an oxbow lake. So yeah, you can see the main river, but also yeah, the oxbow lakes that are surrounding it. So that's just a quick example. But yeah, it's also important to note that not all of them are actually having a U-shape, but because they have been formed alongside the Meander River, we tag all of them as oxbow lakes. Switching back to my slides. Yeah, the other natural water feature we map are the ponds. So yeah, these ones are usually tagged as yeah, natural water, then water plus pond. Yeah, but they are yeah, it's a body of standing water, so most of them are actually man-made, and they're usually smaller than a lake. You find them especially in like parks in cities. You find like small ponds of water that have been a part of that. And we can look at one example here as well in Josim. So yeah, this is a park, like the Lusaka Golf Club. So when I was looking at some examples of of ponds, I found some existing there. So you can see them; they have been rendered on the map. And if we take a close look at the tags, you can see they have been tagged as natural, water, and then water pond. So yeah, you'd think they are like small lakes, but they actually mapped as ponds because they are smaller in size. So yeah, that's how we map a pond. So yeah, if you come across a pond, like a smaller water body in somewhere, then it's just tagged as a pond, especially if it's not part of a river, it's just like water which is in one place, but not a very big body of water, then we tag it as a pond. The other feature, of course, Michael has talked about the reservoir, but also we can add the natural equals water tag alongside it. So I'll not go much into that since it has already been covered. But yeah, the other one where we use the natural is also to map the body of water that is covered by a river. So when we are mapping a river, there is the way, which shows like the direction of the river, but then you can draw polygons around the river to show the area that is covered by the river. So we normally tag that as natural equals water, and then plus water equals river. Again, we can look at one example in Josim for that. Okay, so yeah, I have an example here. Again, so this is this is a river. It's part of River Nile in Uganda, and on the lower side here we do have a reservoir, but then this side we do have a river. So if I check on the tag, so can see it is a multi-polygon, has been tagged as a multi-polygon. It's part of a relation. So when mapping these types of features which are part of relations, also you have to map carefully so that you don't kind of break the multi-polygon or the relation. So you can see there is a dam here which has been which blocks the river, and then as a result of the dam, there is a reservoir which has been formed here. And when you look at the tags here, you can also see this is a type marked polygon and then water reservoir. But then on the other side, it is not the reservoir. Now this is part of the river, and you can see, name is Victoria Nile. The tag is natural water. And then you also have the other tag, which is water equals river. So this is an example of where the area tag for, the natural equals water tag has been used on a river, but on kind of an area feature. Okay. So yeah, the other one is a lagoon. And a lagoon is a body of shallow seawater or brackish water. Brackish water is water that is kind of between salty water and fresh water, but it has been separated from the sea by a continuous barrier. So it's not part of the sea, but it has been blocked by a barrier. So we map that as water equals lagoon, and also we combine it with nature equals water. If the lagoon has an official name, then we can specify that particular name. Also, if it is salty, you can say yes or no if it's not salty water. So again, back to JOSM to look at an example of a lagoon. I have one here from South Africa. And yeah, one of the things that also can help you to see your things is using filters. So I'll have a filter here. Okay, so yeah, this is the area where the lagoon is. So as you can see, I put a filter here to kind of filter out the other information. So because without a filter, it will take me a long time to find where my lagoon is. But now with a filter, I can see, yeah, clearly this is a lagoon, and you can see so this is the sea or the ocean, but then there is a barrier here, which is like a beach, which blocks off now this water. So this is not, even though it's a smaller water body, it's not a pond, but also it's not a lake. We call it a lagoon. So yeah, this is an example of a lagoon. And if you look inside here now, inside there is a lake. So if I remove this tag here and if I remove the filter and check the tags here, you see that this one is mapped as natural water and then water lake. So it's not a lagoon because for it is not cut off from the sea. It's inland. So yeah, it is a lake, whereas the other one was a reservoir. Sorry, a lagoon. Yeah, so that's an example of a lagoon and the tags we use to map that. Yeah, the other one, the other natural feature that we can map is spring. So we normally use this tag to map a location where groundwater naturally flows to the surface from an underground aquifer. And the way we map a spring, we can just add a node at the center and target natural equals spring. But if the spring kind of creates a pool of water and kind of it's like a big area, we can also use an area kind of feature, and then we can also tag the same feature as natural equals spring. So yeah, springs are very common in very many parts of the world, and that's how we map them in OpenStreetMap. Yeah, the last thing I will talk about is the coastline. So the coastline tag is used to define the boundary between land and sea. And usually it is rendered like this on the map. So in this image here, you see this is the sea and this is the mainland. So yeah, this line that separates the two, that is the coastline. And usually you find that seas have like the low tide and the high tide. So sometimes when you're mapping what line should you use to map your coastline? Is it the high tide line or the low tide line? So you normally, like in this image where you see like the water stops here, and then like around the middle here, that's where the coastline would be. So it's like the average between the the high and the low of where the water stops. So yeah, like on the highest, when the water is like on the high tide, that's when where you map like the coastline. So this tag is not used for lakes and rivers. It's used on on seas, like where the sea meets the mainland. Coastlines are kind of complex features, so they're not simple polygons, but they are kind of rather a series of connected ways. So coastlines are not area features, they are aligned features, but they are a series of connected ways that define the boundary between the land and sea. So be very careful when mapping them, because a single error can affect a very big area. So it is really very crucial that they are mapped correctly. Yeah, if you break a coastline, you find, for example, a lake disappearing, or a landmass becoming part of the lake, of the sea. So yeah, be careful when you are mapping coastlines. Make sure you don't like delete lines from the coastline, because that can bring serious rendering issues. Yeah, just to show you maybe a quick example of a coastline. Again, this is in South Africa, and you can see, yeah, this line here is basically the coastline, which is natural equals coastline. So yeah, the good thing, most of these coastlines are already mapped. Sometimes people go to kind of refine the polygon. You may find like it is a straight line when it should be kind of well drawn. So some people kind of go to map to make sure the coastline follows the line, the right line. But yeah, be careful when mapping those, so that you don't yeah, create any issues. Yeah, I'll stop there. I don't know if there are any questions, I can take them, but I'll hand it back to you, Michael.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeffrey. Yes, and well, there are no additional questions visible here, so I think we can pass on here to Ralph.
Michael, you were very muted when you were talking. I believe you were introducing me.
Yeah, Michael, we couldn't hear you very well when you were speaking.
But yeah, sorry for that. And yeah, so no further questions here. Oh, there is one. Yeah, coastline tag canals are used in coast. I'm not quite sure what that means. Well, the coastline, well, Jeffrey mentioned, the consecutive line around all the continents. So of course, it's not one thing.
Yeah, Michael, your sound is still not very clear. I don't know why, but yeah, I can take that question. Yeah, I think Ponsian is asking if we map the coastline as an area, or yeah, the answer is that yeah, we map the coastline. The coastline is an like a way. It's not an area; it's a line kind of feature. So although like it's kind of, yeah, when you connect all those ways, it kind of creates like a polygon, but it's kind of it's still a line feature.
Yeah, so
yeah.
First of all, I fixed my microphone problem, so sorry for any annoyance, and thanks for advising me. And so the main point, which is also in the wiki, is that land is always on the left side of the coastline, and and water is on the right side. So this is one of the very few cases where the direction of a line is really important, yes. And yes, well, and the network of all coastlines together must form, yes, the valid outline of the land on this planet. And if there is some gap, or if there is some duplicate line, or if there is some self-overlap, then the coastline is broken and needs to be fixed first. So that's why we say, well, inserting a few additional points to refine it is certainly not a problem. But if you'd like to split it or connect it with something else, be careful. And I think with that, we can hand over now to Ralph and his part.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for holding out this long and listening. Let's just go into a further section. I'm going to share my screen, see if that works.
Now it's visible.
Ah, yay. Okay. I love it when things happen properly. Okay, I'm going to switch off my camera to save bandwidth and hope this is going to be useful. Right, so we're going to go into, and what is most important that Geoffrey, Michael, and myself are doing is we're not teaching you how to draw. We're teaching you how to understand what you're looking at so that you can make informed decisions of what you draw. So this is all about understanding what you're doing, which is the next level of mapping and is really helpful. Right, so let's move on and see what I will be showing you is moving on, understanding catchment areas, wetlands and deltas, navigation and ferries, irrigation and drainage. I'll try to go through those and help you to have an understanding of what each one is. Right, some of the let's just see, why won't this go back? Right. Okay, so moving on. Come on, slow change. Sorry. It's there's a delayed change. Sorry about that. Okay, right. So one of the things I want to reiterate, you saw Michael using some of the map paint styles like the Apple validator. But when you're working with waterways, one of the map paint styles you'll be using is one called Waterways. And the second one you'll be using is this one called Layer Checker. Now, the Layer Checker is important. There are quite a few people out there that use layer -1 along the full length of a waterway so that it doesn't clash with houses, it doesn't clash with bridges, it doesn't clash with anything, highways. But this is incorrect. So the layer checker will in actual fact highlight where these errors are and help you with that. Okay, now let's just, right, so there, map paint styles waterways as well. And right, we're going to start with what's called catchment areas. So this is to understand how the water is working, how it happens, It's an area of land which all surface water runs off. So if you get rain outside the catchment area, it will not affect your river or waterway that you're interested in. However, if it falls anywhere within the catchment area, it will flow down and eventually get to the main river. So let's have a look at some of those. Here I go. Okay, here is the basin, the catchment basin for the Amazon River. You can see here it is really quite an extensive waterway, and it has a very large catchment area. Now, the catchment area does not recognize things like international boundaries or administrative boundaries. This catchment area actually comes from 9 different countries. So the water flows downhill and it will continue on down to the start. Now, rainfall in this small area here will only affect this small river and will not affect any of the other tributaries going into the main waterway. So it will affect just this little section plus the main waterway all the way down. And each one has its own catchment area. So this river here has got a catchment area that runs up around here and comes back down like this and joins into the waterway there. So you can see that that catchment area is quite a large area and will affect the main stream if there's any major flooding or heavy rainfall in this area alone, but it will not affect anything else upstream. So all of these will not be affected by flooding in this river here, which links in as a tributary to the Amazon. Now, all of that flows down. You can understand that if there is flooding in 2 or 3 of these rivers, it's going to heavily impact downstream here as it flows down. But once we get to the end of the river, or the river delta, the river mouth, this is a different story. Once you get there, there are other forces that come into play. For instance, tidal affects this. And with the tide comes in, so it flows upstream into the river, and then it flows back out. Now, that is got to be a special tag that you use. It's called waterway equals tidal channel. Now, tidal channel is important at that point because let's give you some example. If you've got some heavy flow coming down the river, it will meet the tidal flow coming inland as the tide rises. So those two will connect together, and it will create some very turbulent water as the tide fights to go upstream and the flow of the river tries to go out to sea. And then the real danger comes is when the tide changes and the tide flows out, because you will have the tide flowing out plus the pressure of the water trying to reach the sea, which makes the effect of a very strong current. And this is when swimmers and people get washed out to sea because of this combined flow. So it's important to show that the end of there where it is affected by tide is called a waterway tidal channel. So this is now the idea you get, that all water is flowing downhill and various parts of the catchment area will affect different areas. So when you are seeing flooding, you can understand whether it is local or whether it's going to heavily impact downstream as well. The same with volcanic lava flows. How far down it will find the lowest level, which is of course the water channel. and you can actually direct the water, work out the lava flow direction from that. So these catchment areas have multiple uses and multiple ideas. Let's just give you another example. Here is the Nile Basin. It is a really long one, but in places it's quite narrow. Now, this, in actual fact, flows through 10 different countries. Oh, no, sorry. This is the one that flows through 11 different countries. And you can see it starts off down here at Lake Victoria. It has another main tributary, so that's the White Nile. And you've got the Blue Nile, which starts here at Lake Tana and flows down the Nile to a delta down past Cairo. And you can see again, major rivers do have deltas. Here's another one, the Danube River, and this flows through 10 countries. And you can see that all very short rivers. There are no really big main rivers coming in, except for the Tisza, the Sava, and the Drava, but all the others are quite small feeders into this. So naturally, this will not create a great amount of flooding, but the Danube does have its fair share of floods. Okay, so that is catchment area, and this is how you get direction of flow. This is how you understand how flooding affects and that sort of thing. So we can move on to wetlands. Now, wetlands occur all along waterways. It's generally because of a flat area or a basin. And you can find it all along waterways, and you can also find it in deltas. Now, there's an interesting thing about wetlands. We always think, oh, it's got to be water. Okay, it's usually a land area, and that is permanently or seasonally saturated with moisture. But we don't identify the wetlands by that. Some types are not submerged at all in. So the way to distinguish a wetland is from its vegetation, the characteristic vegetation that is growing just in that specific area. This is something that you look for in the satellite imagery, is the change in color of the area around water that helps you to identify the wetland. So water in wetlands, it can be salt water, fresh water, it can be brackish, it can be mineral. You get different types of wetlands called swamps, marshes, bogs, fens, and also a subtype. So you would get mangrove, carp, poccasin, varzea. So those are all different types that are involved in the wetlands. Right, so I'm going to show you some examples. The Sud wetlands, the Okavango Delta in Botswana, the Tana River Delta. And let me use my JOSM. And let's select the Sud wetlands. Okay, this is not a complex area. We can see here that the Sud is all along a main river waterway. It is not one single wetland area because it's too large for that. So it's been divided up into separate areas. And you can see that in this example. Now, we can see that there are there's water within the area, so it would have to be a multi-polygon to make these inners and outers. However, what is interesting is if we look along the waterway, okay, the main central waterway is not what you attach the wetland to. The wetland does not include the waterway. So if you've got a water banks along the side, that is what will happen. Now, some believe in connecting those. In this case, if we have a look, there are no tags. This is a multi-polygon. So what has happened here is the person has drawn the outline of the waterway, and then they've created this as part of, it hasn't given that a tag. What they've done is they've tagged the multi-polygon wetland, but not the waterway. Okay, now this is something that the waterway is tagged as natural water, equals river, but on top of it, you can see that because the node is quite large, which means that the outline, the multi-polygon, is in actual fact on top of the waterway. That means that they've drawn two separates, but they've combined. And I can see that because this is one single part. It's not subdivided. If this was using the waterway as part of the relation, then it would split at this point over here, and this part would be a separate part of the outer. It's not. The outer is one continuous piece, and therefore it has been drawn separately and added. And you can see here that these are now multi-polygon wetland inner, and it's natural water. So you can see that they have excluded that from the polygon, creating a multi-polygon. And they've done that in various areas to create this. Now that's the way they've done this in this case. So let me get rid of that and go to the Okavango Delta. Right, the Okavango Delta is quite interesting. This is an inland delta or swamp area, wetland. It is in a basin. So while this fills up, as it fills up, it reaches its level of peak height, and the water starts to flow out into the waterway. However, in dry season, when the delta water level is not that high, the water flows back into the delta. So this waterway upstream here, downstream here, is a two-way flow depending on the level of water in the delta. Now this does happen in very few cases where a waterway can flow in either direction. It is quite interesting. Now this is not quite a tidal channel, but it acts like a tidal channel because waterway can go inland and come back out again. So that's interesting of this. Now here, the delta has a continuous multi-polygon water and multi-polygon wetland. And therefore what they've done is they've drawn a single line and then created that as part of the water and part of the wetland. So this is now combined, and you can see that this does not, on this part here, does not actually link with the waterway. It's separate from the waterway, but on this side, it links with the waterway and is joined to the waterway. So this multi-polygon is quite interesting in that one side is linked with the water and one side is not. This gets quite interesting in places where you are trying to correct or adjust or change. So you have to find out exactly what is actually happening with the boundary. And the one way to figure that is to check whether it is continuous or whether it's just parts of it are highlighting. So you can see that when I highlight that, a large area is showing up. Okay, and that will show you the extent. I haven't got this, but I can see here that it stops there. You see that? So that is one section, that's another section, and they're not combining. This section does not run across here. That is not highlighting. So this is a combined section of that side and this side, and it's separated from that. That means you have a relation, and you have to handle that differently to an ordinary polygon. So please understand relations when you want to make changes to wetlands like this. Excuse me. Right, let's get rid of that and have a look at another one. And this one will go to the Tana River. Now, Tana River is interesting here. Let's go up to the top here. This is just a very simple natural wetland. It's a wetland marsh. And you can see it's one single polygon. It's not a multi-polygon. It's not part of a relation. It's just one single item with no internal issues like woodland, lakes, dams, or anything like that inside it. So here you have a simple wetland, and that's not difficult to change. It's like any other polygon. You can alter and change that. However, when we come down here, we can see that this person does not understand multi-polygons. So what they have done is, instead of creating a multi-polygon, they want to show bits of land, dry land within the wetland. And what they've done is they've done a continuous polygon like that, and then they've latched a continuous polygon on the other side, but leaving the gap. So here you can see that this person did not understand what a multi-polygon is, but they have still created exactly the same effect. So it's not entirely wrong, but it's not quite correct either. And you can see that each polygon is a single polygon, but they haven't made that as part of a relation. So each polygon is separate wetland marsh and adjoining another wetland marsh. So it's not saying that this is a part of that. It's saying these two are separate parts. To join all of those together in a relation would make more meaning to this entire wetland area. Now, there is something else I want to show you. Let's just switch off. Remember, I said that you can see a difference. Now here we can see the difference. You can see that the coloring of this is different to the coloring here. And this is because you're seeing the wetland and not wetland. Now here, the person has not understood, and they have shown this whole area as a wetland, but inside that wetland, you've got a definite different type of vegetation. Now, let me try and show you that. Where have we got here? Oh, okay, I could not read that. Oh, okay, sorry. But as we can see here, this is not part of the wetland. So you would create a multi-polygon. So here you would create a multi-polygon, and inside it you would have natural wood. And along the river edge, you would have natural wood as an inner to the multi-polygon outer. So that's the way you would show this. But this is interesting. As I said, this person has not understood multi-polygons, but has been very innovative. Right. So let's move on. And let's look at navigation. Waterway highway interaction, waterway interaction. Right. So in navigation, the first thing you have to understand is that you need a wide waterway and a center channel. So first of all, understand when you're drawing waterways, the edge of the waterway that you see on the imagery may not be the edge of the waterway. If you've got trees and shrubs overhanging the water, then that is not the edge of the water. The edge of the water is a bit further inland, away from the edges of the trees. So please remember, you can see on the side here how much of this tree overlaps. When you're seeing that from the top, that's where you think the edge of the water is, when in actual fact the edge of the water is over here somewhere, more towards the base of the tree. So please remember that when you're doing large waterways. Now, waterways are some of the most problematic features. The biggest problem is that they're not static. They're mobile. They get bigger when in the rainy season. They get smaller in the drier season, and some of them even dry up and then fill up again in a flood. So they're not static. But not only do they keep changing, but as you heard from Geoffrey and Michael, there are many different things along the way. You get dams, lakes, highways crossing, wetlands, ferries. You've got weirs, you've got rapids. So yes, there are all sorts of things along the way that affect any movement of traffic along the river. To give you some idea of what some of the problem, is that going to change? Yes, there we go. Okay, you can see here the continuous change of waterway during its flood season. All the channels change and this sort of thing. So, of course, a place like this is not ideal for a permanent waterway channel for large shipping, but certainly a smaller craft like kayaks, canoes, motorboats might be able to find their way along. But it's very, very difficult for us to map this sort of thing. The best thing that we can do is to show an outline of the natural water, high level water, and then a center line down middle to indicate the flow of the river. But we could never actually keep changing that every time it floods. It's going to be an uphill job. Right. Now, the next thing, of course, is in navigation, is highway navigation, and how do highways cross? Now, here we have a ferry crossing the river. You can see that the highway on the left here is the B3289, is a tertiary road. And on the other side, it is also the B3289, which is a tertiary road as well, which indicates that it is a continuation of that road, and this road is a continuation. So the ferry is a continuation, and it's important for the ferry to be able to indicate that. So let's have a look at that. Right, so here we have the ferry. You can see where the highway stops. We put a node, and that's where the highway stops. Now, the next part might be a pier, so where the ship or the boat or the ferry actually moors up, ready to collect passengers. This can be a pier that goes just out into the water, or it can be a ramp where the cars run down onto the boat. At the point where the waterway reaches matches with the highway, you have a node which is an amenity ferry terminal. Okay, that indicates to the navigation software that this is a change point, and it needs to note that. Then you have the ferry, which is secondary. So the road is secondary. So that secondary tag should be carried out across the service road or the pier, and across the ferry as well to the other side. It must remain a secondary to be able to be continuous as secondary. You see at the other side, there's once again where the cars actually go onto the ferry, is called an amenity ferry terminal. That's the node. The actual crossing is called a ferry secondary, or ferry, yes. Now, for this to be able to be used by cars, the ferry itself needs to have the tag motor vehicle, yes, in which case the sat nav will be able to say, all right, once you get to this point, you need to go onto the ferry, the car on the ferry, and the car comes off the ferry at the other side and carries on the road. So the secondary road will continue across the water, and the sat nav will be able to talk you through that. Let me just see if I can show that. No, okay. Right, I haven't got it here. So what I can do is try and call that later and show you how the navigation software will actually take you through that. Okay, now let's have another look at a ferry. So let's okay. That won't let me see that. So here we have the Isle of Wight ferry. You can see here that the highway goes straight onto the ferry. Now, this is not quite correct. In actual fact, this part of the, because this is now a seagoing ferry and not a river ferry, that is a natural coastline. Now, in actual fact, the coastline should not go up to this point where the car ferry tag is. It should be across here where the water is. And this is a ramp or a service road pier, which takes you down to the ferry. So this is incorrect, the way it's depicted. However, it is still the same. Now, here we have the ferry is not connecting two highways. It is connecting one land to another. It goes down to the Isle of Wight. So the connection is not there. We can see here that this is a tertiary road there, but going onto the ferry, it becomes a service road. Okay, and highway service. But do you notice it's a highway service? It's not a highway tertiary. So it is not a continuation of the tertiary road. It is just a service road that takes you onto the ferry. In actual fact, that is incorrect. The correct way would be to come into the car park here. So that would be the correct way into the car park, where they all line up, go through passport control, or show their tickets, and then go onto the ferry, or they come off the ferry and go back and join the tertiary road. So here you can see there's no continuation of road, but it is a direct link from the road onto the ferry, and the ferry will be a direct link back to a road, and the link is this node here, which is car ferry terminal, amenity ferry terminal, and it's got a name. So and it's got an operator, Whitelink. Now, if you do a sat nav search from this point to the Isle of Wight, it will tell you at this point that you have to go left onto the Whitelink car ferry. So that will, the sat nav will tell you that. So this will work as long as you have everything linking together and no breaks within it. Right, now, let's have a look. At waterway navigation. Right, navigation occurs on sea, on large bodies of water, and on rivers, but does not happen on streams. Okay, yes, I see there is something from one of our people here. Yes, we are explaining what is happening and what the alternates are. But as you can see from the wetlands alone, this would be a separate, would need to be a separate webinar just explaining and showing how to do the wetlands. We don't have the time. As you can see already, we are an hour and a half. This is a really long session. And we need to do webinars for showing navigation, how to draw navigation, how to draw wetlands, how to wetland relations, things like that. So yes, I agree with you. We are just getting you to understand what is there and what is involved, and we would have to do separate webinar to do individuals. Multi-polygons and relations is, yes, very definitely a subject we need to do in another webinar. Okay, Geoffrey talked about and Michael talked about obstacles on the water bodies, and when you're navigating down a river, those have to be taken into account. Right, so waterways, they can be used by large ships, but the large ships need deep water. So there has to be a deep water channel for any large shipping to be able to use. Barges, water buses, or taxis can use shallower water, and can travel closer to the banks. But large ships are usually, the large ship lanes are usually indicated by floating buoys along the deep channel, so that large shipping stays within that. The barges, water buses, and taxis can move along closer to the banks outside the large shipping lane. Leisure craft like motorboats, canoes, kayaks, they can use shallow water, and they can go probably most places on these waterways. So that is the separation of what can and what can't. Now, let's just see if I can show some indicator of that. I think I've got it. Sorry, this is a bit slow. Come on, come on. Ah, okay, right. So here we have a large body of water. Here is the river line, which flows through this area and this waterway. And what it is saying is that it is a boat, yes, but it doesn't say anything about passengers, okay? Waterway river is it, and you can see it's part of a route relation called Waterway Nile River, and it is the mainstream of that. However, it does not give any indication that this is a ferry of any kind or what the boats can actually carry. Now, the interesting part here is that while it says boat, we have here a dam area, and it says boat, yes, can go through here, and so that is an indicator that there is a channel through here for the boats, and the layer is -1. So there is a channel through here, and it's still Waterway River. Now that is important. Where you have a dam or anything like that, you have to ensure that there is a way for that boat to go through. Now, it's not always that the boat or anything like that will use the center line of there. You can see here, here is another one where you have there we are, the amenity ferry terminal. Now you can see that this ferry does not use the same route as the center line of the river. And you can see that that goes all the way through the lake like this, okay? And it continues all the way through the lake. But it does not follow the river channel. The channel here may be that it is showing the deep water channel as the part of the waterway, which is why it says boat, yes. But the ferry does not follow that route. Now, on other waterways like a lake or a large tract of water along the waterway, you would have what is called a waterway fairway. Now, the waterway fairway is because the river does not flow through, the fairway is a route through the waterway that shipping can use. So a route through a waterway can be called a waterway fairway, although there's no river involved. And boats can use that as their navigation across the large body of water. Now let's just see. Open recent. It won't let me open that. Okay. I can show you that of another example of navigation. Let's just go to OpenStreetMap. Okay, this isn't working. Okay, that did not open, so sorry about that. But what I was going to show you there was that the dam, if you've got a dam across, you could also have locks, because the dam water will be higher than the river water at the bottom. And as Michael showed you, they will have a series of locks, which allows a ship, a large vessel, to go in and slowly be lowered down to the water level below, so that it can move along the river. So that's another way of a series of locks. You get that on canals as well, where a different level of water requires the lowering of the boat to that next level. So that does happen in many canals as well. Two of the most famous canals for large shipping is the Suez Canal and Panama Canal. Those are two very well-known areas. Right, let's have a look at another item on our list, irrigation. Irrigation takes place for watering of crops and things like that, and there are a number of different ways that irrigation is shown. Let me try and show that. Let's hope that this works. Here is one form of irrigation. It's usually out in dry areas that use aquifers or underground water. And what they do is they have circular areas like this of cultivation of farmland, and in the middle it's not showing up right, so let me it's not showing. Right, here's one Okay, so the center point in the middle of all of this is tagged irrigation pivot. Okay, but we don't show anything else. There's a long arm that goes around here and it slowly turns. So we don't show the arm because we never know what position the arm is going to be, but it sprays water down all around this area. So all we do is we've got the outline which says land use farmland and the center point that says irrigation pivot. And that's how it's quite easy to show irrigation here. So if you see a whole series of these like that, it's very likely this is pivot irrigation. Other forms of irrigation, I hope this will work. Right, yeah, okay, this has worked. Now here you can see an irrigation system. You've got the natural waterways going down through because the water has to come from somewhere. Now, what can happen is they use overflow water or pumps to pump water in. So there has to be some kind of a connection for these irrigation. They can be irrigation. This is a waterway canal, and it's intermittent, which means they switch the water on and off as it comes in. You can see here, waterway canal. They can also be waterway ditches, ditch irrigation. So as long as you tag that as irrigation, that would be correct. This, I'm trying to see, has not been connected up. Yes, here we are. You can see here that waterway canal, and this is intermittent, so they can fill that up through a pumping station, and they will fill that up, and then they can let it loose, open the gates, and allow the water to flood through. What happens is at various points they can allow the water to flood across the farmlands. Now you find a lot of this kind of irrigation in the rice paddies is where you can find a lot of this, where they use the water to flood the area to grow the rice. But other irrigation systems use this just intermittent. So once again, they can be canals, they can be natural waterways, and they can be ditches. And some farmers, in actual fact, because of the wet nature of the land, they will also have drainage channels so that they can drain out some of the wet to allow for correct irrigation. So that was talking about irrigation and also about drainage. Drainage is ditches as well. Now, here's something that very few people actually are aware of, and I want to bring that to your attention. Let me see if I can bring that up. This is an interesting thing. This is called motorway drainage. And if you come across it, you might not recognize or know what it is, but this is a drainage channel that runs down the center of a motorway. So this here, you've got a grass verge, and down the center is a motorway drainage. So it's called waterway drain. You can see there's no direction on it. That's because it is a drain. And at points along there, we need, in actual fact, to have some way of that water to disappear. So you can see that that flows into this way. and that flows into this way, and it goes underground and comes out into a natural waterway or drain, and that natural waterway and drain would join up with a natural waterway. In this case, it's a river. So you can see that the whole system of waterway can have a drainage system with natural links to natural water. And that's something that you can look for in the future when you are drawing your waterways. Let's just see if I can show you right here. Let me switch this off. Here you can see where there is a drainage point in there. Let me see if there. Okay, Esri has got a much nicer, clearer vision. There you can see a drainage point, and there you can see that there is an irrigation ditch all along this centerway. There's another point of exit for the waterways that would flow out. There's another one. So you can see that all along here, they've allowed for the drainage of the waterways. Now, this may be because, let's just have a look at the contouring. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Okay. And we can see the contouring shows that it's very hilly here. So you are going to get a water running down the length of the highway as it goes downhill in heavy rain. So you need to collect that. So they will put a camber on the road so that the water will flow sideways into the water channel and then down into the waterway systems. So once again, that is a type of drainage system. Right, I'm going to stop now and say thank you very much for your time. It's been a really long session, and I'll hand back to Michael here for any questions. Back to you, Michael.
Yes, thanks, Ralph, for your very interesting talk. And yeah, I just followed here the discussion, which says, yeah, we will have to have some follow-up webinars here and clarify things with multi-polygons and relations. And I fully agree that this would warrant a webinar of its own. I mean, yeah. So yes, I think, well, and I hope that you can hear me, because the problems were not only intermittent. I had before, now my main computer was crashing. So I'm now on a notebook, but yeah.
We can hear you perfectly, Michael.
Yeah, sure. Yes, and well, so that's something for the rest of this weekend. Yeah, get this main computer up and running again. But yeah, thanks everyone who joined us until now. We've had nearly 50 during high time. Now we are still nearly 30 here in this webinar. So definitely we picked the right topic, I guess. And yeah, as was already mentioned here on the chat, give us a few days, and then the recording of this webinar will be available at the usual place, and that would be the training webinar slot here in HOT's YouTube channel. So yeah, thanks for having been with us, and yeah, there will be more webinars to come over the month. Just follow social media and you'll be informed. And as I think there are no other urgent topics here, I see, I think, yeah, we can end this now. And I wish you all a very happy weekend. And yeah, keep mapping, validating, and whatever you do when you're working for HOT. Thanks, and goodbye from us.